My name is Jake Reardon, 28 years old, freshly divorced, one tank of gas away from flat broke. That is how I ended up on the graveyard shift at Pump and Go number 413, a low cinder block box parked beside Interstate 80, just outside North Platte, Nebraska. Town population 23,914. Population of this zip code after midnight. Me, the crickets, and whatever crawls in off the prairie on 18 wheels. I walked in at 11:03 on a Tuesday night that smelled like snow, trying to make up its mind. The guy I was replacing, name tag just said Dale in cracked plastic, never looked up from wiping the counter with a rag older than my ex-wife's grudges. He smelled like menthols and fryer grease. Without a single word, he slapped a laminated sheet the size of a Denny's menu onto the counter, yellowed, corners curled like burnt bacon. "House rules," he rasped, voice raw as if he'd gargled the parking lot gravel. "Follow them exactly or don't come back tomorrow." Then he was gone. Screen door banged like a shotgun. His taillights never even blinked, just swallowed by the dark like the highway had teeth. I locked the door behind him at 11:05 sharp. Rule number 2, lock up at 11:05. Do not open for anyone until you see their face in the camera. I turned to survey my new kingdom. The place hummed. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead in that sick green-white that turns every customer half corpse. Coolers in the back glowed electric blue, shelves of Monster and Red Bull sweating quietly. Coffee Island had 3 pots, dark roast that tasted like asphalt, decaf that tasted like regret, and whatever house blend was. I took one sip and decided some questions are not worth answering. The slushy machine wheezed like an asthmatic accordion. Lottery tickets glittered under glass like cheap stained glass promises for people who can't afford hope. I started the opening checklist because that is what you do when you are new and terrified of screwing up. Count the till. $300 exactly. All 5s and 1s like someone robbed a church collection plate. Check the hot dogs rolling on the grill. 4 leathery veterans spinning since God knows when. Restock the cooler. Rule number 6, always face the labels forward. They like to read. I laughed at that one. Nerves. Outside, the pumps glowed under sodium lights the color of old bruises. 8 islands, 16 pumps. Only pump 7 wore an out-of-order bag over the card reader. Wind hissed across the lot, kicking up tiny tornadoes of dust and dead leaves. Way off, a coyote yipped 3 times and shut up fast, like it remembered it was not alone. By 12:47, I had mopped the men's room. Someone had puked red 40 all over the wall like a Jackson Pollock made of cough syrup. I wiped down the nacho cheese pump that always leaves your fingers smelling like a crime scene, and rearranged the beef jerky into perfect little soldiers. That was when I noticed the walk-in cooler door propped open with a broken mop handle. I stepped inside to grab another case of Coors. The air hit me like a slap, 32 degrees easy. My breath fogged. Metal shelves towered on both sides, stacked floor to ceiling with cardboard and plastic pallets of soda syrup. The light was one flickering shop bulb that made everything look like an old VHS tape about to eat itself. I found the Coors, bent to lifted, and the door behind me swung shut with a pneumatic hiss. Click. The light died. Pitch black. Not the kind where you still see shapes. Real black that presses on your eyeballs. Temperature dropped another 10 degrees in a heartbeat. My skin prickled like 1,000 ants woke up under my shirt. I dropped the case. Cans clattered, rolled, went silent. Then I heard it. Slow scrape, metal on metal, coming from the back wall where the milk crates stack. Like someone dragging a chain across concrete. Once, twice, then a wet thud, like a side of beef hitting the floor. I fumbled for my phone. Screen said 3:34 a.m. That could not be right. I had been in here 30 seconds, max. The scraping stopped. Silence so complete, I heard my pulse in my ears. Thump, 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 loud as a bass drum. Then a whisper right against my left ear, even though I was alone. Never open the walk-in after 3:33. The voice was mine. Exactly mine. Like someone recorded me sleeping and played it back inside my skull. I lunged for the door handle. Ice cold, rhymed with frost that had not been there before. I yanked. Nothing. Yanked again. Harder. Shoulder slamming metal. On the third try, it gave way so fast, I spilled out onto the rubber mat in the drink aisle, knees skidding through spilled icy that smelled like blue raspberry and panic. The cooler door hung open behind me. Light inside was back on, steady and innocent. No scrape, no thud. Just cases of beer exactly where I left them. Except one pallet of Bud Light had been rearranged into a perfect pyramid, 12 cans high, pointing straight at the camera in the corner like it was posing. I slammed the door shut. My hands left bloody prints on the handle. Turns out, I had ripped a nail clean off without noticing. The clock over the register read 3:37 a.m. 4 minutes gone. 4 minutes I could not account for. I was still staring at the cooler when the bell above the entrance dinged. A woman in nurse's scrubs stood there, snowflakes melting in her hair even though it had not started snowing yet. She did not look at me, just walked straight to the cooler, pressed both palms against the glass, and stared inside like she was looking for someone. "Ma'am, were you okay?" My voice cracked like a 13-year-old. She turned. Her eyes were milky, pupils blown wide. "Did you let him out?" she whispered. Then she smiled, teeth too many for her mouth, and asked for a pack of Cool Filter Kings and a Polaroid. Camera we did not sell. I had not noticed the new rule yet, written in red Sharpie on the inside of the cooler door, visible only when it was open. Rule number 4, if you hear knocking from the beer shelves, do not answer. They know your name now. I locked the cooler with the padlock we were not supposed to have. My hands shook so bad the key missed the hole 4 times. Outside, the nurse was gone. No footprints in the dust. Just a single Polaroid on the counter, still developing. It showed me inside the cooler, mouth open in a scream I did not remember making, reaching for a door that was not there. On the back, in handwriting that matched mine exactly, "See you at 4 a.m., Jake. Bring the red key." The register drawer was open 6 inches. Inside, tucked under the stacks of 20s, was a key I had never seen before. Bright red, plastic bow, teeth filed down to nubs. A tag dangled from it, for what comes after. I stared at the cooler. The pyramid of Bud Light had collapsed. Cans lay scattered like bones. And from somewhere deep inside the walls, slow and deliberate, came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I did not answer. Not yet. But the night still had 4 hours left, and the list of rules was growing longer by the minute. I stood frozen with that red key biting into my palm like it had edges sharper than it looked. The knocks from inside the cooler had stopped, but the silence felt worse, like the building was holding its breath and waiting for me to make the next mistake. I forced my legs to move. First stop, the rule sheet Dale left. It was still on the counter, only now it wasn't 1 sheet anymore. 3 pages, stapled crooked in the top left corner. The new pages were thin, almost see-through, like someone had fed a printer the skin of an onion. The ink on them looked wet, dark maroon instead of black, and it smelled faintly of pennies left in the rain. I flipped to the second page. New rules had appeared in handwriting that definitely wasn't corporate. Someone had used a fountain pen that bled. Rule number 4, the one I had seen scrawled inside the cooler, was now printed neat and centered. If you hear knocking from the beer shelves, do not answer. They know your name now. Below it, fresh. Rule number 5, never sell anything to someone who asks for a brand that doesn't exist. Rule number 6, if the customer stares at the cooler longer than 10 seconds, offer them the free coffee. They're not here for gas. I glanced at the coffee island. The house blend pot was full again, even though I hadn't brewed it. Steam curled up in the shape of a question mark before it vanished. The bell dinged. A man in a Carhartt jacket and a seed corn cap shuffled in. His boots left wet prints that smelled like turned earth after a funeral. He walked straight to the counter, eyes bloodshot, breath fogging even though the store was warm. "Pack of Maverick Reds," he said, voice flat as the plains, "and a 6-pack of Old Milwaukee's Best. Ice. The one with the silver can." I rang up the smokes. "Sorry, buddy, we don't carry Old Milwaukee anything. Got Bud, Coors, Miller." He cut me off, leaning so close I could count the broken capillaries in his nose. "Silver can," he repeated. "You keep it in the back, behind the milk." His pupils were pinpricks. He wasn't blinking. 10 seconds. 11. 12. I remembered rule number 6. My hand moved on its own, grabbed a styrofoam cup, filled it with house blend. The coffee came out thick, almost syrupy, smelling like burnt sugar and wet soil. I slid it across the counter. "On the house," I said. He stared at the cup like he'd never seen liquid before. Then he wrapped both cracked hands around it, took a long pull, and sighed like a man who'd just come up for air after years underwater. "Thank you, Jake," he whispered. I never told him my name. He left the cigarettes and the untouched coffee and walked back out into the dark. His boot prints ended 3 steps past the door. After that, nothing. Like the night erased him. 4:02 a.m. Another ding. This time, a kid, maybe 19. Hoodie up, earbuds dangling like dead snakes. He made a beeline for the cooler, pressed his forehead to the glass the same way the nurse had. His breath fogged a perfect handprint. "Hey man, can I help you find something?" He didn't turn. "You got any Frostbite lager? The blue label with the wolf?" "We don't." He spun then, eyes wide and wet. "It's my brother's favorite. He's been waiting in there since last winter." I felt the temperature drop 5 degrees even though the thermostat hadn't moved. The red key in my pocket started to warm like it was sitting on a hot plate. "Free coffee," I croaked, already pouring. The kid ignored it. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out a Polaroid. Same kind the nurse left. He slid it across the counter face down. "I was told to give this to the new guy," he said. "Said you'd know what to do with it after 4. He left without another word. The bell didn't even ring on his way out. I flipped the photo. It was the inside of the cooler again. Same angle as the first one, but now there were 2 versions of me. One screaming at the door, the second standing behind the first, smiling, holding the red key up like a toast. The timestamp in the corner, 4:11 a.m., 9 minutes from now. I looked up at the security monitor. The kid was walking across the lot, but every time his foot hit the pavement, the footage stuttered. He'd take 1 step forward, then the frame would jump and he'd be 2 steps back. Forward 2, back 1. Like the cameras couldn't decide which version of him was real. He reached pump 7, the broken one, and just stood there staring at the dark screen on the pump, waiting. I glanced down at the rule sheet. A new line had bled through the paper while I wasn't looking, right under rule number 6. Rule number 7. At 4:11 exactly, someone will ask for the red key. Do not give it to them. They will look like you. My mouth went dry. The coffee pot gurgled, refilled itself again. This time, the liquid inside was blacker than crude oil and moving slow, like it was thick with something that used to be alive. 4:09 a.m. The knock started again, but not from the cooler this time, from the beer shelves inside the store. 3 slow raps, then a pause, then my own voice, muffled through the glass. "Jake, let me out. It's cold." I backed up until my spine hit the cigarette cabinet. The packs rattled like teeth. 4:10. The front door opened without the bell. No chime, no wind, just open. A man walked in wearing my face, my work shirt, still creased from the package, my name tag, shiny and new. The cut on my thumb from the cooler door was mirrored on his, fresh and bleeding. He smiled with my mouth and said, in my voice, "Hey, relief is here. Give me the red key and you can clock out." He extended my own hand, palm up, waiting. The clock above the register clicked to 4:11, and from the beer shelves, the knocking became frantic. I couldn't move. My own face stared back at me from across the counter, wearing the same exhausted eyes I saw in the mirror every morning, except his were too bright, too awake, like someone had cranked the contrast all the way up. The cut on his thumb dripped a single red bead that hit the floor and stayed there, perfectly round, refusing to soak in. "Key," he said again, softer this time. The way I talk when I'm trying not to wake my dog back when I still had a dog. "You've had a long night, Jake. Let me take over." Behind him, the security monitor flickered. The kid in the hoodie was still at pump 7, but now he wasn't alone. 6 other figures stood around the pump in a loose circle, all facing inward, heads bowed like they were praying to the busted card reader. None of them cast shadows, even though the sodium lights were blazing. The knocking from the beer shelves turned into pounding. Glass rattled in the cooler doors. Cans shifted, rolling by themselves into the shape of a crude arrow pointing straight at pump 7. My doppelganger tilted his head. "They're getting impatient." I finally found my voice. "You're not me." His smile widened, too many teeth, same as the nurse. "Not yet." Rule number 7 flashed in my head like a neon sign. Do not give it to them. They will look like you. I slid my hand into my pocket, closed my fist around the red key so hard the plastic bow cut half moons into my skin. "Back off." For a second the smile faltered. Something old and hungry flickered behind my stolen eyes. Then the bell dinged, actually dinged this time, and a new customer stomped in, shaking snow off a camouflage coat. Real snow, fat flakes that hissed when they hit the floor and turned to water instantly. The man was built like a refrigerator with legs. Trucker, probably. He took one look at the two of us and stopped dead. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, crossing himself. "Which one of you is the real clerk?" My double turned smoothly. "Evening, sir. Pump 7 for me, cash." The trucker's eyes darted between us. "Pump 7 don't work. Been broke since I started running this route in 2009. My double's smile never wavered. "It works tonight." The trucker backed toward the door. "I'll try the Sinclair up the road." He was gone before the bell finished chiming. The second he left, my double lunged across the counter. Fast. Too fast. His fingers brushed my wrist, ice cold, and the red key burned white hot in my pocket like it had been dipped in a forge. I jerked back, slammed into the lottery display. Scratch-offs rained down like cheap confetti. He hissed, actually hissed, and recoiled, cradling his hand. The skin where he touched me was blistered, bubbling like he'd grabbed a branding iron. Outside, Pump 7 roared to life. I heard it clear as day over the pounding from the shelves. Gas gurgled through the hose, even though no one was holding the nozzle. The digital readout spun backward, numbers rolling down from 40 gallons to 39, 38, like the pump was sucking fuel out of the air itself. My double straightened, blisters already fading. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I grabbed the first thing my hand found. the jar of pickled eggs from the counter, heavy, sloshing. I hurled it. The jar shattered against his shoulder. Brine exploded across his shirt, soaked the name tag. Where the liquid hit, the fabric smoked. The letters JAKE melted into runny black streaks. He screamed, my scream, but twisted, layered with something deeper, older, like every voice that had ever worked this shift screaming at once. Then he simply wasn't there. No puff of smoke, no fade out, just gone. The only proof he'd existed was the puddle of brine slowly spelling my name on the floor before the letters soaked in and vanished. The pounding in the cooler stopped, dead quiet. Pump 7 shut off with a metallic clunk. The readout froze at exactly 6 gallons and 66 cents. I ran to the window. The kid in the hoodie was walking away from the pump now, nozzle still in his hand, dragging a line of gasoline across the concrete that steamed in the cold. The other 6 figures were gone. Only wet footprints remained, leading nowhere. On the pump's cracked screen, someone had scrawled in the frost with a finger, "Cash only, jar on counter." I looked back. There, next to the pickled egg mess, sat a mason jar I'd never seen before. Quart size, lid rusted shut. Inside floated teeth, human teeth, some still pink at the root. 2 were missing. The jar was short exactly 2. The rule sheet rustled on its own. A new page had inserted itself, paper so thin it felt damp. Fresh rule, written in what looked like the same brine. Rule number 9, Pump 7 is cash, only. Never go out to collect. If they pay with teeth, count twice. If they're short, offer your own. The jar lid rattled, just once. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the counter, Louisville Slugger, taped handle, somebody's name carved into the barrel, T. Carver, 2017, and backed toward the office door. The little windowless room with the safe and the ancient computer that still ran Windows XP. I was 2 steps away when the intercom crackled. Not the store speakers, the outside ones, the ones that tell truckers their tank is full. A voice came through, thin and distorted by wind. "Clerk, come collect." Same voice as my double. I slammed the office door, twisted the deadbolt we weren't supposed to have. The room smelled like old pizza and desperation. I wedged the bat under the doorknob for good measure. On the ancient monitor, the security feed cycled through cameras. Pumps, coolers, register, parking lot. Pump 7 camera showed the kid again, standing perfectly still, nozzle dangling. Gasoline pooled around his sneakers, reflecting the lights in rainbows. He raised his head and looked straight into the lens. He opened his mouth. No sound came through the speakers, but I read his lips clear as day. "2 more, Jake, then you can sleep." The teeth jar was on the desk now, inside the office. I never brought it in. The lid spun off by itself and rolled to the floor with a metallic ping. 2 empty spots waited, side by side, like sockets in a skull. The clock on the wall clicked to 5 a.m., 1 hour down, 3 to go. And somewhere outside, Pump 7 started up again, hungry. I sat in the office chair with the bat across my lap and stared at the mason jar like it might sprout legs and walk away. The teeth inside had shifted while I blinked. They now formed a tiny smiling face, 2 incisors for eyes, a chipped molar for a nose. The 2 empty spots gaped at the bottom like missing front teeth on a jack-o'-lantern. The monitor flickered. Every camera feed was rolling static except Pump 7. The kid was gone. The gasoline puddle had frozen into a perfect circle of black ice that reflected the moon even though clouds had swallowed the sky hours ago. 5:08 a.m. A timid knock on the office door. 3 soft taps, like someone afraid to wake a sleeping baby. "Excuse me?" A woman's voice, shaky, muffled through the steel. I really need the restroom, please. I didn't move. Rule number 12 was burned into my brain, even though I hadn't seen it written yet. If a customer asks for the family restroom, walk away and lock the office. I was already locked in. Doing the first part was impossible. Another knock, harder. Sir, it's an emergency. I've got my little girl with me. My stomach dropped. Kids made everything worse. I'd seen enough true crime documentaries to know that. I eased the bat aside and cracked the door 2 inches. Chain still on. A woman in her 30s stood there, face pale, under the fluorescent spill, coat dusted with snow that wasn't falling anymore. Clutched against her hip was a girl, maybe 6 years old, thumb in mouth, eyes huge and unblinking. The mom's mascara had run in perfect twin rivers. Please, the mom whispered. We've been driving since Denver. She's about to have an accident. I glanced past them. The store looked normal. Too normal. The pickled egg brine had dried into a faint outline of my name that glowed faintly under the blacklight by the energy drinks. There's 2 bathrooms right there, I said, nodding toward the usual doors marked Bucks and Does, with the little cowboy hat stickers someone thought were funny in 2003. The woman shook her head so hard her hair whipped. Those are occupied. There's a line, please. The family one? I hesitated. Corporate paperwork only ever showed 2 single-stall restrooms. No family restroom. No third door. But I'd worked enough retail to know customers see what they want to see. Against every screaming instinct, I unhooked the chain. She brushed past me so fast I smelled wet wool and vanilla car freshener. The little girl turned her head as they passed. Her eyes were solid black, no whites, like 2 8-balls sunk in milk. The mom yanked the girl down the narrow hallway behind the coolers, the one that dead ends at the mop closet. Except it didn't dead end tonight. 10 feet past the mop closet, where bare cinder block should have been, a new door stood ajar. Baby blue paint, little wooden plaque that read Family Restroom with a cartoon stork carrying a bundle. The door hadn't been there when I mopped 4 hours ago. I'd have bet my left nut on it. The woman pushed inside. Light spilled out warm and yellow, the kind of light you see in old family photos from the 90s. I heard a toilet flush, water running, a child's giggle that echoed wrong, too deep, like it came up from a well. 30 seconds later, the mom screamed, not startled, pure terror, the kind that rips your throat raw. I ran. The hallway stretched. I swear it stretched. 5 steps turned into 15, 20. The floor tiles rippled under my sneakers like I was running on a treadmill. The family restroom door was still 20 feet away and getting farther. The little girl stepped out alone. She was smiling now, thumb no longer in her mouth. In its place, she held something small and wet. A tooth. My molar. Root still bloody. Mommy says thank you, she said, in a voice that belonged to a chain-smoking grandmother. She needed help finding the mirror. Then she skipped past me, back toward the store, leaving tiny bloody footprints that smoked where they touched the tile. I reached the door. It was heavy wood now, not the hollow core cheap crap the rest of the place used. A brass knob cold as dry ice. Inside, the restroom was huge. Impossible. Bigger than the entire store. Pastel tiles, changing table. Potpourri that smelled like funeral lilies. 3 sinks. And 1 mirror, floor to ceiling, framed in gold. The mother stood in front of it, palms pressed to the glass. Her reflection wasn't moving with her. It was turned away, head down, shoulders shaking like she was sobbing. But the real woman was silent, mouth open in that scream that wouldn't come out anymore. I took 1 step inside. The mirror rippled. The reflection lifted its head. Same face as the mom, but the eyes were sewn shut with black thread. It smiled with stitches for lips and raised 1 hand, pressing it to the inside of the glass, right where the real mom's hand was. Crack. A hairline fracture spiderwebbed from their palms. Black water seeped through the crack, thick as tar, smelling of pennies and gasoline. "Help me," the real mom finally whispered. "It won't let me leave." I grabbed her coat sleeve. The fabric disintegrated under my fingers, turned to wet ash. Her skin underneath was ice. She didn't budge, like she was part of the mirror now. Behind me, the little girl's voice from the hallway. "Daddy's waiting in the car. He's got the teeth you owe." I looked back. The hallway was gone. Just blue tile stretching forever in every direction. The only door was the one I'd come through, now closed. The stork plaque bleeding from the eyes. The mirror cracked again, wider. The reflection reached through, fingers first, pale and bloated like they'd been underwater for days. They curled around the real mom's wrist and pulled. She slid forward an inch. Her shoes left the floor. Her mouth stretched impossibly wide, no sound, just the wet pop of ligaments. I swung the bat. It connected with the mirror dead center. The impact jolted up my arms like I'd hit concrete. The glass didn't shatter. Instead, it spiderwebbed further and sucked the bat out of my hands, handle first, like the mirror was hungry. The reflection smiled wider. "We're keeping this one," it said in the mom's voice layered with 1,000 others. "But you can have what's left." The mirror spat something onto the tile. A Polaroid, still wet. It was me, standing in this exact bathroom, taking a selfie with the mom and the little girl. Except in the photo, my eyes were sewn shut, and my mouth was full of teeth that weren't mine. Timestamp, 2:17 a.m. tomorrow night. The lights flickered. When they came back steady, I was back in the real hallway. The blue door was gone. Bare cinder blocks stared at me like it had never been anything else. The mop closet smelled like bleach and nothing more. On the floor lay the little girl's coat, empty, inside out. The lining had been turned into a crude map, stitched with black thread. A perfect outline of the store, with a new X marked behind the coolers. Underneath, in red Sharpie that wasn't dry yet, rule number 12. If a customer asks for the family restroom, walk away and lock the office. They only need one more to finish the set. I ran back to the register. The mason jar was waiting. On the counter, lid off. The smiling tooth face was gone. In its place, every tooth had been arranged into the number 1. One spot still empty. The store speakers crackled. A child's voice. Sing-song. "Ready or not, here we come." The clock above the register froze at 2:57 a.m. and refused to budge. The second hand twitched like a dying insect, jerking forward 1 tick, then sliding back 2. Every light in the place dimmed to the color of old nicotine, and the air turned thick, like breathing soup that had been left on the stove too long. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Corporate text, the one I'd been dreading since orientation. "Inventory tonight. Full count. Start at 3:00 a.m. sharp. No excuses. No shortages. Scan every item twice. Never say the final number out loud." I'd laughed when the day shift manager mentioned it. "Some old school audit thing," he'd said. "Keeps the numbers honest." Now the laugh felt lodged in my throat like a chicken bone. The rule sheet had grown again. 5 pages now, stapled so many times the metal had punched through and curled like claws. The newest page was damp, warm to the touch, and the words kept rearranging themselves while I read. Rule number 15, count everything twice, but never say the final number out loud. They're listening for the total. If you speak it, they finish the set. I grabbed the scanner gun from under the counter. The plastic was slick with something that smelled like the inside of the cooler. The battery icon blinked 666%. That wasn't possible. I smacked it against the counter anyway. The number didn't change. 2:59 a.m. The slushy machine let out a death rattle and shut off. Both tanks drained at once, blue and red swirling down the tubes into the floor drain like blood leaving a corpse. The pipes gurgled, then burped up a single baby tooth that clattered into the metal grate and sat there spinning. I started with the coolers because that felt safest. Wrong, but safest. First door, energy drinks. I scanned every can. The gun beeped obediently, but the little screen kept flashing the same word no matter what UPC I hit. More. Second door, domestic beer. Same thing. I counted out loud the first time because I'm an idiot. 1, 2, 3. By 37, the cans started moving on their own, sliding into perfect spirals that pointed toward the back wall like iron filings to a magnet. I stopped counting out loud. The scanner gun grew heavier. The trigger stuck. When I forced it, the screen changed. They heard you at 37. Keep going. I moved to the shelves. Chips first. Every bag I scanned deflated like something inside had taken a bite. The air filled with the smell of vinegar and wet cardboard. One bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos split open, and the chips arranged themselves on the floor into a crude arrow pointing behind the counter. I followed it because what else was I going to do? Behind the register, the beef jerky pegs were empty. Every single pack had migrated to the hot dog roller and was spinning slowly, plastic wrappers melting, filling the store with the smell of teriyaki and burning hair. The roller stopped. The wrappers peeled back like banana skins. Inside each pouch wasn't jerky. It was fingers, pale, severed, still wearing cheap silver class rings. They twitched when the scanner light hit them. I gagged so hard my vision tunneled, a wet plop behind me. I turned. The jar of pig's feet from the end cap had unscrewed itself. The brine poured out slow and deliberate, spelling my full legal name across the floor in cursive that would have made a calligraphy teacher weep. Jacob Matthew Reardon. The last letter was still forming when the brine reversed direction, sucking back into the jar like a video played backward. The glass resealed itself with a pop. The scanner gun vibrated so hard, my teeth chattered. The screen now read, "Total so far, 3,000 theory. Do not say it, do not think it, they are close." I still had the entire walk-in to count. I didn't want to open that door. Every hair on my body stood up and pointed at it like it was north, and I was a compass made of fear. But corporate sees everything. The cameras were rolling. Somewhere in Omaha, a regional manager was sipping burnt coffee and waiting for my numbers. I typed the code into the keypad. 666, enter. Of course, that was the code tonight. The lock clicked. The door swung inward on its own. Inside, the cooler had grown. The back wall was gone. It opened into a warehouse the size of an airplane hangar. Shelves stretching up into darkness that swallowed the light. Cases of beer and soda were stacked 20 feet high, but every label was wrong. Brands I'd never heard of. Frostbite Lager, Old Milwaukee's Best Ice Maverick Reds, silver can. The same ones the customers had asked for, and every single case was open. Empty cans and bottles lay scattered like husks. In the center of the floor, someone had built a perfect replica of the store out of crushed beer cans. Tiny registers, tiny coolers, tiny slushy machine made of blue plastic shards. And in the middle of the miniature counter sat a tiny mason jar, no bigger than a shot glass. Inside, one tooth. Mine. The empty spot was filled. A voice crackled over the intercom, but it wasn't the outside speakers this time. It was inside the cooler, bouncing off the metal walls, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Jake, you're short 37 items. Start with the pig's feet." The overhead sprinklers kicked on. Not water, Brine. Thick, pink, stinking of formaldehyde. It poured down in sheets, soaking my shirt, filling my shoes. The scanner gun shorted out with a pop and died. The empty cans began to rattle. Then they rose. Thousands of them, floating up like aluminum balloons, forming a shape in the air above me. A face. My face, but made of crushed Coors Light and despair. The mouth opened, revealing the missing tooth right in front. It spoke with my voice, layered with every clerk who'd ever stood behind this counter. "Say the number, Jake. Say it, and you can clock out." I backed up until my spine hit a shelf. Cans rained down around me, slicing my forearms, my cheeks. Blood mixed with brine and ran into my mouth, metallic and sour. I looked at the tiny mason jar on the miniature counter. The tooth inside was glowing. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed the jar, smashed it against the floor. The tooth skittered across the concrete. I stomped it. Once, twice. It cracked like porcelain. Inside was not bone. It was plastic. A tracker. Corporate's little joke. The floating face screamed. The cans exploded outward, slicing the air like shrapnel. The sprinklers cut off mid-pour. When the dust settled, I was back in the regular walk-in. Door shut behind me, dry. The scanner gun in my hand was at 0% battery and stone cold. The store clock unfroze and jumped to 3:37 a.m. 37 minutes gone. Again. On the counter, the rule sheet had added one final line in red that dripped like fresh paint. Rule number 16, inventory complete. Total items, 370. You said it in your head. We heard you anyway. The teeth jar was full now, every tooth in place. The lid spun shut and sealed itself with a wet click. And from the ceiling, slow and deliberate, came 37 drops of brine, hitting the floor one by one, spelling a new word I didn't want to read. Soon. The store lights flickered back to full strength at 3:42 a.m., like nothing had happened. The brine on the floor had vanished, leaving only faint salt rings that looked like crop circles under the fluorescence. My shoes squelched anyway, soaked through to the socks. I smelled like a deli dumpster behind a morgue. I needed air that didn't taste like death, so I cracked the front door for the first time all night. Rule number 2, be damned. January wind knifed straight through my shirt. The temperature had plummeted 30 degrees in the last hour. The parking lot was glazed with black ice that hadn't been there before. Every pump light glowed, but the snow wasn't falling from the sky. It was rising. Flakes lifted off the ground in slow motion, spiraling upward like someone had hit rewind on the weather. A single set of footprints led from pump 7 to the door. Bare feet, perfect impressions, toes splayed wide, no frostbite, no blood. They stopped 2 inches from the threshold and just ended. The bell dinged behind me, even though the door was still in my hand. He was already inside. A man, barefoot, hospital gown flapping open in the back, skin the color of old milk, no coat, no shoes. Snowflakes melted on his shoulders and reformed the second they dripped, like the water couldn't decide whether to stay liquid. His lips were blue, but his eyes were warm, dark, almost kind. 666 on pump 4, he said, voice soft, like he was reading a bedtime story. Cash. I couldn't move. My breath came out in a long white plume that hung in the air between us, refusing to dissipate. He waited, patient. The gown had a faded logo on the chest. North Platte Community Hospital, 1974. The fabric was thin enough to see the Y incision scar underneath, stitched with thick black thread that wiggled when he breathed. I finally found my voice. "You walked here? From where?" He smiled. "Not too many teeth, not too few, just enough to make it worse. From the table. They said I could leave if I paid the toll." He opened his hand. A fistful of snow, perfectly dry, powdery, the kind you only get at 40 below. It didn't melt against his palm, didn't even look wet. He placed it on the counter next to the register. The snow sat there in a little mound, glowing faintly blue under the lights. "That's 666, he repeated. I stared at the snow. The register drawer was already open, like it knew. A new rule had burned itself into the underside of the counter in scorched wood. Rule number 23. If they pay with something that shouldn't be currency, give them the red key. They've earned it. The red key was suddenly in my hand. I didn't remember taking it out of my pocket. It was warm now, almost hot, pulsing like a heartbeat. The man extended his wrist. A hospital bracelet, yellowed paper, name smeared with old blood. Patient 23, DOE, John, DOA, 010374. He turned his hand palm up. In the center was a perfect keyhole, surgically cut, edges healed over decades ago. I slid the red key in. It fit like it had been measured for him before he was born. He sighed, long and slow, the sound of a man finally getting to take off his boots after a double shift. The key turned on its own. Click. The hospital gown fell away, dissolving into snow that swirled up and out to the door. Underneath, he was naked, but the cold didn't touch him. The Y scar split open down the middle, clean and bloodless. Inside his chest cavity wasn't organs. It was a storage closet, the one behind the slushy machine that only the manager has the key for. Except now it was inside him. He reached in with both hands and pulled out a Polaroid. Same size, same white border, still dripping something thick and clear. "This one's from tomorrow," he said, placing it face down on the counter next to the snow. "Don't peek until after the blizzard." He stepped backward toward the door. Every footstep erased the bare prints he'd made coming in. By the time he reached the threshold, the snow on the counter had molded itself into a tiny replica of the store, complete with miniature pumps and a little red key stuck in pump 4. Then he walked out into the rising snow and simply wasn't there anymore. No footprints going out, no swirl of flakes, just gone. I picked up the Polaroid. It was warm. The back had tomorrow's date written in my handwriting. 11/12/25, 2:17 a.m. I didn't flip it. The storage closet door behind the slushy machine rattled once, hard, like something inside had woken up and remembered it was late for work. The snow sculpture on the counter began to melt, but only in one spot. The liquid ran together and formed words before it soaked into the formica. "They're operating again tonight. Bring the table." The temperature inside the store plummeted. Frost raced across the inside of the windows in perfect surgical incisions, Y-shapes branching out like lightning. The intercom crackled. A woman's voice, calm, professional, the kind you hear right before they put the mask on. "Patient Reardon, Jacob. Or 4 is prepped. Anesthesia administered. Scalpel." The red key was gone from my hand. The teeth jar was open again. One tooth missing. My left canine. I ran my tongue over the gap and tasted blood, fresh and bright. The storage closet door rattled again. This time, it opened an inch. Cold white light spilled out, the color of operating room LEDs. I saw the edge of a stainless steel table, wheels locked, paper sheet already stained with old blood. A gloved hand reached out and placed a new name tag on the floor just inside the door. My name, shiny plastic, still warm from the laminator. The clock jumped to 4:58 a.m. The blizzard arrived all at once. Wind screamed. The windows bowed inward. Snow blasted through every crack, piling up inside the store in perfect drifts that spelled out the same word over and over. Soon, soon, soon. I grabbed the Polaroid and ran for the office. The door slammed shut behind me on its own. The deadbolt turned without a key. On the monitor, every camera showed the same thing. The operating table rolling itself across the sales floor, slow and steady, wheels squeaking over the frost. It stopped right in front of the office window. The gloved hand patted the paper sheet twice, inviting. The Polaroid in my hand began to develop on its own. I didn't want to look, but my eyes wouldn't leave it. It was me, strapped to the table, eyes open, mouth sewn shut with red thread that spelled the final total from inventory, 3,370 wusung. The timestamp, 5:55 a.m., 5 minutes from now. The office light flickered once and died. In the dark, the table rolled closer. The office went blacker than the inside of the cooler. Not just lights out black, but the kind of dark that has weight, like someone poured tar over my eyes and sealed it with a lid. The air tasted of iodine and pennies. My heartbeat was the only sound until the table wheels started again. Squeak, 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 right outside the door, slow as a funeral march. I fumbled for the desk lamp. The switch clicked, but nothing happened. I slapped the monitor. Static snow, then every feed snapped to the same image. The operating table parked dead center of the sales floor, paper sheet fluttering even though there was no wind. The straps were already buckled, waiting. 5:51 a.m. The clock on the wall hadn't moved since the blizzard hit. The red numbers glowed like cigarette cherries. 5:51, 5:51, 5:51. I tried the door handle, locked from the outside now. The deadbolt I'd thrown myself was turned the wrong way, like a ghost had reached through the steel and flipped it. A soft knock. 3 taps. Polite. Jake? My own voice, but calm, almost bored. Time to clock out, buddy. Sun's coming up. I knew that trick. I pressed my back to the door and slid down until I was sitting on the cold tile, knees to chest. The knocking stopped. Paper rustled on the other side, like someone sliding a note underneath. It came through the crack at the bottom. A single time card, the kind we haven't used since 2009. My name pre-printed at the top. In, 11:00 p.m. Out, blank. The punch hole was already torn, but the timestamp read 6:00 a.m. in red ink that dripped like it was still wet. Another note followed, this one written on the back of a lottery scratch-off that had won nothing. Rule number 31. There is no morning shift. Do not believe anyone who says otherwise. They just want your name tag. I looked at the corkboard above the desk. 8 name tags pinned in a neat row, plastic edges cracked, names faded. None of them were Dale's. The newest one, bottom right, still had a drop of blood on the corner. T. Carver, 2017. Same year carved into the baseball bat. The monitor flickered. One camera finally showed something different. The front windows. Outside, the blizzard had stopped as suddenly as it started. The sky was the color of a healing bruise, but the sun wasn't rising. It was stuck on the horizon, half a red disc bleeding into the corn stubble, refusing to climb. 5:55 a.m. The door handle rattled hard enough to shake the frame. "Open up, Jake. Corporate says you're overtime." My voice again, but now layered with others. The nurse, the barefoot man, the little girl, the trucker who crossed himself, all of them talking through my mouth. I crawled to the safe, spun the dial with shaking fingers. Inside was the emergency cash box, a half-empty bottle of wild turkey, and a Polaroid I didn't remember putting there. I flipped it, me strapped to the table, eyes wide, mouth sewn, but this one was different. The thread spelled a new number, 31, the exact rule I was breaking by looking at the photo. The office light snapped on, harsh and white. The door swung inward on its own. The operating table was inside now. It filled the tiny room wall to wall, stainless steel, gleaming. The paper sheet was gone. In its place, every missing item from inventory, arranged in perfect rows like surgical instruments. 37 cans of Frostbite Lager, 6 silver cans of Old Milwaukee's Best Ice, 1 jar of teeth, lid off, smiling. The red key stuck straight up in the center like a flag. My double stood at the head of the table, wearing a clean pump-and-go shirt, name tag blank. He held a clipboard. "Relief's here," he said, smiling with my face. "Sign the transfer form and you're free." He offered a pen. The ink inside was blood. Mine. I could smell it. I stayed on the floor. "There is no morning shift." His smile twitched. "Sure there is. Look outside." I didn't want to, but my head turned anyway. Through the office window, I could see the sales floor. 6 people stood at the counter, all wearing pump-and-go shirts, all facing me. Every single one had my face. Different ages, different haircuts, but the same tired eyes. The newest one, me, but thinner, cheeks sunken, waved like we were old friends. Behind them, the front door opened and closed over and over, bell dinging each time a new version of me walked in, shook snow off boots that weren't wet, and took their place in line. The double tapped the clipboard. "We just need your tag. Then you can join the others." I looked at the corkboard. 9 name tags now. The empty pin waited for mine. The table straps unbuckled themselves, leather creaking like old saddles. I lunged for the wild turkey, smashed the bottle against the desk. Amber liquid and glass exploded across the floor. I grabbed the longest shard and slashed my name tag off my shirt, plastic cracking. The double hissed, face flickering between every clerk who'd ever worked this shift. "That's against policy." I jammed the jagged plastic into the red key still stuck in the table, twisted hard. The key snapped in half. Every light in the store exploded at once. Glass rained like hail. The temperature spiked 30 degrees, hot as a fryer. The operating table folded in on itself with a metallic scream, collapsing into a flat sheet of steel that slid across the floor and vanished under the desk like it had never existed. When the sparks died, the office was empty, door hanging open. No table, no doubles, just silence and the smell of ozone and burnt bourbon. I stumbled out to the sales floor. The front windows showed honest dawn now, pale gold creeping over the corn. Real snow lay in gentle drifts, untouched except for one set of tire tracks leading away toward the interstate. The clock read 6:03 a.m. The rule sheet lay on the counter, reduced to a single page. Every rule above number 31 had been burned away, leaving only charred edges. The last line glowed fresh, written in ash that hadn't cooled. Rule number 32. When the sun finally rises, hang the new tag. They still need one more to open the door. I looked at the corkboard through the office window. 10 pins, 9 tags. The 10th pin held a brand new tag, still warm, my name in perfect block letters. It was dripping. Outside, a semi downshifted on the highway, air brakes hissing like a dying breath. The bell dinged. Another version of me walked in, shaking snow off a coat he wasn't wearing, and smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life for this shift. The new me walked straight to the counter, boots that weren't wet, leaving wet prints anyway. Same height, same slump in the shoulders, same half-moon scar under the left eye I got from a barbed wire fence when I was 12. He even smelled like the apartment I left. Behind, stale pizza and cheap detergent. "Rough night, huh?" he said, voice raw like he'd been screaming in a dream. "I can take over. You look like hell." I didn't answer. I was staring at the front window. A new rule had appeared there, burned into the glass from the outside, letters 3 feet tall, still glowing orange at the edges. Rule number 33. When you decide to quit, burn the rule sheet and walk west until the corn swallows you. Do not look back. Do not count your steps. They will try to follow using your shadow. The glass was cold under my fingertips, but the letters pulsed warm, like arteries under skin. My double leaned over the counter, elbows on the same spot I'd bled hours ago. "You're not actually thinking about it, are you?" He laughed. My laugh, but hollow. "Every single one of us thought about it. Look where they are." He pointed to the slushy machine. The frosted glass was clear now, like someone had wiped it clean. Inside the tanks, floating in the blue and red slush, were the name tags. All 10 of them. Faces pressed against the plastic from the inside, mouths open, eyes wide, bubbles rising slow. Dale was there, T. Carver. The others I never met. Their lips moved in perfect sync. Stay. The new me slid a fresh rule sheet across the counter. 1 page, pristine, corporate letterhead. Every rule from 1 to 32 neatly typed. At the bottom, blank space for my signature under the words, "I acknowledge receipt and will follow all rules until relieved." He uncapped a pen with his teeth. "Sign it, clock out, go sleep in the office. I'll handle the rest. That's how it works." I took the pen. The ink inside was warm. He smiled, relieved. I flipped the sheet over and wrote in block letters across the back, "I quit." Then I grabbed the lighter from behind the cigarette display, the cheap Bic we use for shrink wrap, and set the corner on fire. The paper caught instantly. Flames raced across the rules, eating them like starving things. The fire didn't burn my fingers. It felt like holding sunlight. My double lunged, face twisting into every clerk at once. "You can't!" I dropped the flaming sheet into the trash can lined with yesterday's lottery tickets. The fire roared up, blue and hungry, licking the ceiling tiles. Smoke smelled like burning cornfields and funeral flowers. The sprinklers didn't come on. The name tags in the slushy machine began to scream, high and thin, glass cracking in spider webs. My double clawed at the counter, nails splintering. "They'll never let you leave." I was already moving. I kicked the front door open. Real dawn hit me full in the face, gold and brutal and honest. The snow had stopped. The interstate hummed in the distance, trucks gearing up for morning runs. The corn stubble stretched west for miles, dry stalks rattling like bones in a box. I stepped over the threshold. The bell didn't ding. Behind me, the store lights exploded one by one. Pop, 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 like gunshots walking me out. I heard glass shatter, metal groan. The slushy machine finally burst and spray blue and red across the ceiling in a frozen rainbow. I started walking west. The rules said not to count steps. I counted anyway. 1. The red key in my pocket dissolved into rust that ran down my leg like blood. 2. The teeth jar shattered. I heard every tooth hit the tile and roll toward the door, chasing me. 3. My shadow stretched long behind me, black on white snow. Something inside it moved wrong. Too many limbs. 4. The store groaned, a sound like a dying animal. Wood splintered. The roof sagged. I kept walking. At step 33, the ground shook. I felt it through my boots, a seismic hiccup. I didn't turn around, but I saw it anyway in the reflection of a frozen puddle. The entire building folded in on itself, cinder blocks crumbling inward, neon sign flickering out with a final pump and gone that died mid-spark. The structure imploded into a perfect square of rubble, no bigger than a pickup truck. then sank straight into the earth like the prairie swallowed it whole. The hole sealed over with ice, not even a scar. My shadow went still. I kept walking. The cornstalks parted without wind, making a path I swear wasn't there a heartbeat ago. Dry leaves whispered my name, but softer now, almost respectful. I walked until the interstate noise faded behind me, and the only sound was my breathing and the crunch of snow under boots that suddenly felt too small. At some point I realized I wasn't cold anymore. I risked one look back. Nothing. Flat white field, blue sky, sun climbing like it had a shift to make. No store, no pumps, no rules. Just a single set of footprints leading west, already filling with new snow. I shoved my hands in my pockets and kept going. Somewhere ahead, the corn rustled like it was laughing, or maybe crying. Hard to tell the difference out here, but I didn't stop. Not until the stalks closed behind me and the world went quiet except for the sound of something finally, truly letting go.